Hello, everybody. How's it going? This is Down the Rabbit Hole podcast again with your host, Rob Turley, co-founder, co-CEO at White Rabbit Intel, as if you care where I worked. And I would love to introduce our featured guest here, Sean Storms. Really awesome guy, really impressive, and he has the attitude unlike anybody else I've met, which is awesome. It's almost similar to mine, where you have such a positive attitude, you almost annoy people. So, Sean, please introduce yourself.
Rob, thanks so much, man. How do I follow that up? I'll try to live up to it. So I'm the CEO, Chief Demand Creator for the Third Door. And what we basically do is help just about any company uneven the competitive playing field. So how do we help companies break from the pack, especially when they're all kind of, living in this highly competitive world? How do we thoroughly help companies uneven the competitive playing field? That's what we do. But we do it in a way that's very unconventional, but it works like a charm.
That's awesome. And I can relate because we're doing the same thing over at my company, except it's more on the analytics side of all the whole equation, But today we're going to be talking about something pretty exciting, and it's about how B2B has failed for so long to bring over some of the values and processes that B2C is using when it comes to selling, marketing, and overall coming to market with a product or seeing some level of success further than what the regular is and being different instead of that normalization of business.
Yeah, it's interesting, Rob. I appreciate you saying that. You look at the B2B side, and you and I were talking about this a little bit offline. They're so stuck in the status quo. And I think that starts with their education. And then they come up into business and their mentors tell them the same thing. And it's legacy stuff. They just pass it down from generation to generation. And yet you look over on the B2C side and you see some of the coolest brands that have ever been developed with some of the greatest advocacy that you can imagine. Pixar, 29 out of 29 straight films debut at number one. What? Like no other film studio had ever had, I think, 3 in a row. You look at Cirque du Soleil. I always like to ask audiences, I'll say, all right, who's number 2 in Cirque du Soleil's business category? There isn't anybody.
Yeah.
So this idea of how we design what I like to call unprecedented value, you're absolutely right, Rob. We can take our cues from some of these iconic B2C companies and somehow learn from them and take that over to the B2B side.
Right. I could not agree more. And B2C has done such a good job for so long with getting people to follow something as if it's a cult following. Look at Apple, for example. My God. And they also sell B2B. So fantastic. You cannot pry an iPhone or a MacBook from the cold, dead hands from its users, because guess what? That phone or laptop is still warm and it's not going to move. It's crazy. It's almost like a form of indoctrination of what they did. Remember that commercial way back in the day, which all the people walking in and they all have the white shirts on and they're sitting in front of that screen during the brainwashing session and all that. It's dare to be different, dare to be creative and all that. Money cannot buy what type of following that's created. How can we learn from some of that in B2B? Why can't we do it in B2B? Well, the thing is we can. We're just not. What's the problem with that?
I think I could be dead wrong on this, but I'd like your opinion on it. I think when you look at some of these great B2C companies that were founded, they were founded by someone like yourself, somebody who said, I see a better way, I see a better path, not just different, but better. And so we're going to go create it. On the B2B side, again, a lot of legacy companies. So the senior leaders who come in, and they may be very creative and innovative, you got a board to deal with, right? They answer to the board, or they got to answer to Wall Street, right? And so somebody steals their crayons and they just fall right into, I guess we better do it the same old way.
That's true. Continuity is needed for board, and continuity is needed for when a company goes public. When a company goes public, I consider that the death of innovation right there.
Yeah.
They here's in that frozen just bog of doing whatever it was that was, and then buy their way into innovation.
This is such a great example, because one of the things I like to say is you can't buy a hamburger at Chick-fil-A and you can't buy a chicken sandwich at Five Guys, and there's a reason for that. If you look at Jerry Morrell, who started Five Guys, right? This is him and his 4 sons, hence the name Five Guys. The burgers are amazing, but burgers, fries, soft drink, I think only recently in the past few years did they add shakes. That's all they do. He grew it from 0 to $2 billion, and he won't sell out, and he won't take it public for the reason you just said. He knows they're going to wreck it.
Yep, everything they touch dies. As soon as it becomes about the almighty dollar, as soon as the public is in there and there's trading, it's all about volume of trading, reason why that volume's happening. And I think one person who kind of broke the status quo there would be Elon Musk.
Good point.
He doesn't give a shit. And he even controls his own stock. It's crazy. He says, the stock is going to go up. Oh, the price is too high right now. It needs to dip. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to do exactly what he said because he publicly said it's going to do that. So everybody thinks, oh, Elon Musk said it, so it has to be true. And then people follow that exact pattern.
Yeah, I agree. And Elon, that's a great segue into, I get asked a lot of, not so much what the secret sauce is, right, into helping these companies thoroughly uneven the competitive playing field. It's how is it done? And for me, there's 3 legs to the stool, but it always starts with purpose. And purpose is not mission. Mission is the core strategy that fulfills the purpose. So you got to have purpose before you can have mission, okay? So purpose is, why does the organization exist? What's the difference we're trying to make in people's lives? Look at a guy like Elon Musk. He knew damn well he wanted to build that mega gig battery factory long before he wanted to build electric cars. He wanted to be the supplier of batteries for all of those who were going to come after him with Tesla. Why did he release the Tesla IP 5 years before he had to? Because he wants more electric car makers. Why? Because he owns the biggest battery factory in the world now out there in Nevada. He's a very purpose-driven guy, and let's face it, he wants to get to Mars.
Yeah, damn straight. I mean, a patent's only worth so much, and I think that more information should be open source, especially information to innovate. If you create something and you have a hold on something that is needed to create something else where it quite literally is not possible or it's not profitable to try to compete because it's gone too far.
Yeah,
that's exactly what you want to do. Exactly what you want to do.
So these brands, you're right. Whether it's Elon's companies or Apple, we mentioned, Pixar's a favorite, all these companies. Another term for purpose would be higher calling. What's the higher calling? What's the true north of this company? How do we bring extreme alignment and clarity to an entire organization, whether it's 5 people or 5,000 people? Man, that's where that advocacy happens. That's where they fall in love with it. I use Harry's, right? Men's shaving products. I don't know if you ever heard of Harry's.
I love their body soap. It's my favorite. That blue capped one, I don't even know what the scent is, but oh my God, I can't get enough. And it's always not even on the shelf. Whenever they bring it in and there's actually some stocked up, I buy 4 to 5.
And so it's awesome, right? So these guys, one of the 2 guys I know for a fact was one of the Warby Parker guys. They understand that whole piece of how do we tell a story? How do we offer something? How do we see what others miss, which is really the key? I suck at a lot of stuff, I'm sure, but if I have one superpower, I have this ability, once I get to know a company and know the leadership, and I get to know the industry, I can see what others miss. But Harry's is another one that's done a great job with that. But again, Rob, they're on the B2C side.
Yeah, it's mission-driven purpose, but you need to have a vision that aligns. And often what I've seen in B2B companies, at the very least, is that the vision does not align throughout the whole company. If you ask someone what the vision of the company is, it's a different story every single time. People are not on the same page. They're not working. So they're working against each other to get to the same goal, but the vision is what guides them. If the vision isn't as plain as day, then everybody's going to try to get to the goal differently when they should be working in coordination.
I agree totally. And for what it's worth, there's a great book out there by Patrick Lencioni called The Advantage. And I think this is where I got this from. But purpose, again, for the sake of your audience that are listening, and if they're taking notes, it is why the reason why the organization exists, the higher calling. What's the difference we want to make in people's lives? The mission is a 6 to 9 month strategy of what are we going to execute against next? It's the core strategy that fulfills the purpose. Vision is what the purpose looks like fulfilled in the future. But all three of those come together, as you said, to build this alignment and clarity, which is what Lencioni's book is all about. And I'm telling you, that is a tremendous profit driver because you've got organizational ADD in just about every fucking company I've ever walked into.
Yeah, it's true. People can't even grasp what's going on in other departments because they're so focused on what they're focused on and they can only focus on one thing at a time.
Right.
It's the inability to see the bigger picture. And I feel like that also flows through in many different areas. For example, sales. With a sales team, all they care about, well, this is the problem with enterprise sales. Well, first off, they pass it to say, okay, SDR, they get passed to an AE. As soon as you pass them, you've lost just about a 10% chance of closing because of the fact that you pass them and they feel like, someone feels like a used napkin. You're just passing them along and they feel like they're a number. They're not a person. That original POC is so important to keep wired in. But my point is that salespeople compete to be the best teammate instead of competing to become the best team. That's the problem. It's all about me. It's all profit driven. I have issues with how the current compensation structure is for salespeople because it's not team oriented. It's about me. And, I need to close more deals because it makes me more money. So the commission structure is a little bit awkward. I feel it should be more team-based, but then you're going to lose a lot of the salespeople who are top performers. That would drive people who are top performers to teach the lower performers how to do the job properly, which is one of the biggest issues. Why do you think the 80-20 rule exists in sales teams where 80% of the salespeople, 80% of closes happen from the top
20%.
performers.
Right.
And then 20% of the closes happen with all of the rest. It's because they're not sharing their skill, their information, and how they do it because they're holding it close to their chest. That's their IP. Again, they're guarding their IP. So the bigger picture is not in mind. The vision's not aligned. It's now become selfish instead of team oriented, and it's going to tank the whole thing. Sure, the company's successful and you're closing a lot of deals and all that good stuff. But if everybody was on board, the company would benefit more. Their base salary would increase, and then they would be making more commission overall because if the lower performers were closing as many deals as the top performers and it was combined commission, overall it would be more profitable for everyone.
So I would agree with you. Let's, no pun intended, let's go down the rabbit hole for a minute.
Sure.
So what you just said is uniquely American. It is highly competitive. It's the John Wayne syndrome, right? If you're going to tell me that the way I make money is I got to drive more sales than anybody else, I'm going to get really good at it. And everybody else can go to hell. I'm going to do what I got to do. That's highly competitive. But then we look over at John Mackey, who started Whole Foods Market. John was the guy who said, think about this. It's nuts. The objective is not to grow. The objective is to fulfill the purpose. So John felt at Whole Foods that his purpose was to be a leader in the wellness revolution. So everything they did was to be a leader in the wellness revolution. Thing takes off like a rocket. They make more money than you could ever imagine. They charge more money than you could ever imagine, so on and so forth. This is a true story. I went to work. I got recruited in 2002 into Grainger. Grainger is a $6 billion global industrial supply company. When I got recruited in, I had to take over 3 districts, which basically then was a region. It was about a $60 million region. And I told the president of the U.S. division when he offered me the job, I said, I'll do it. I said, but I want to do it my way. I don't want to do it your way. So, Rob, I didn't even go down the team route that you just described. I turned them all into scouts. And I said, we're going to pay you based on the intel that you're going to bring in about your customers every week. That's our sales meeting. We're not covering numbers, quotas, goals, any of that crap. It's intelligence. What are you bringing in? And we started to develop, we started to see all these things that none of our competitors were seeing. We connected those dots, developed value propositions, and we started attracting business like crazy. And inside of a year, we became the number 4, the 3 districts combined, were the number 4 in the country in terms of revenue growth, profitable growth, actually. And previously, we were 104. So I can tell you that there's so many different ways to do the sales thing differently. It's not even funny, but I believe in rallying them around a cause, though I do agree with team-based selling versus individual.
Yep, I love it. And I love what you were saying because you just described my company's entire purpose is sales data. because sales data is the most important thing. People say, oh, it's a waste of my time. Oh, it bogs me down. Yeah, but if you're targeting a bunch of people with no fucking clue where the hell you're targeting, or you're doing some
Right.
diluted assumption of who your target is, or if you're targeting based off who the company tells you to, when you should be targeting off of who you can have conversations with. That's the biggest problem. And that's exactly what we're trying to solve, is that it is about data, and it's not about the how. It's not about the why. It's actually about the can I. That's what it's about. And it's about the actionability. So is it actionable? It doesn't matter. Like, people waste so much money on lead gen too, in a sense where, oh, it's a good lead. You know, some people pay up to what, $50 to $100 per lead when they're buying lists. It's not about the lead at all. No. It's about the ability to connect with that person. Whether you got the same person, let's say, for just sake of example, you have Leroy Jenkins, because that's always a fun joke. You have Leroy Jenkins, and you've paid $100 for this lead. It has every single aspect of him filled out and everything like that when you're doing cold outreach. And then what you do is that you start targeting otherwise toward another lead who costs 5 cents, right? Let's say both of those leads were Leroy Jenkins. Both. You paid 5 cents for one, you paid $100 for the other. If you reach out to that person, as long as the contact information is correct, and it was unsuccessful, it was not because you didn't spend enough money on leads. It's because that person, the seller, was not qualified to sell to that decision maker, Leroy. If you actually gave the lead to another salesperson who's a relationship builder, because Leroy's a relationship builder, that would have been a successful meeting and you would have had set next steps, but you gave it to an aggressive seller. How are you supposed to sort that out? It's not based off of how much information's in the lead that you buy. Right. It's about who's on the job and how can you tell? Well, you would have to do research for months to be able to figure that out. What are their interests? Do they have a similar buying style to my selling style? Like all that good stuff. Artificial intelligence is really the only thing that can figure that out in a snap. Otherwise, you're going to take forever. But from what I've seen, and all I do is stare at broken down sales data all day, every day to the molecular level, the people who capture the most data are the most successful, hands down.
Wow. I hear you. The lead gen is an interesting segue. Again, you look at Elon Musk. Let's talk about another guy who's in that realm, another billionaire who made good. Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal, billionaire, made the first major investment in Facebook. Good guy, knows what he's doing. Wrote a book called...
Didn't he also create, what is it, Moxtra?
Don't know.
He was one of the co-founders. I'll have to look into that.
Peter Thiel, Thiel. And when I do, there's a keynote that I do, and I have these 6 quotes from his book, 0 to 1. And one of them is, if you have to advertise it or sell it, it's not good enough. Now, that's a pretty high bar. But that's where I take my clients. I'm like, how many unsolicited qualified leads or referrals do you get every week? Or I'll ask this question, because remember, they're in B2B. This is all foreign to them. What if you had no sales force? What if you had to get rid of them all tomorrow? How would you drive revenue? B2C does it all day long. How would you do it? And it really messes with their heads about how they would do it, which gets us to the business disease that's reached epidemic proportions. It's sameness. And so we have to design unprecedented value, right? Can't buy a hamburger at Chick-fil-A. You can't buy a chicken sandwich at Five Guys. It's unprecedented. So the more we know our customers, going back to your Intel piece, the more we understand what these people are, who they are, what they need, how they behave, all those things, we can start to uncover new truths. That's how I like to use that. It's not even insights yet, just new truths. These new truths come out, that we learn about them. Then we start to connect dots. Then the new truths start to come out, right? Nobody asked for the airplane. Nobody asked for the automobile. Nobody asked for the radio, the television, the internet, $6 coffee, or six-figure electric cars. Nobody asked for any of this. So every time the guy who led sales organizations for 28 years, I'm telling you right now, the more salespeople they have, the more an indictment that it is on the value prop. We got to fix the value proposition.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah, and I like to call it blue chip disorder because, oh, are you a blue chip solution? That means that you're some massive fucking enterprise that has always been around since the beginning of time, and it's always a good choice to go with them because they're so well known and their product is quality, even though you've never touched it in your entire life. That right there is notoriety. Notoriety can build with being different rather than sameness. If you try to become another blue chip solution, or if you try to act as them, you're not going to get the business. And this is also, since this is changing, this is why the enterprises are hemorrhaging customers.
Yes.
Because people are daring to be different. They're not trying to be like the enterprises. That aspect of business is dead. It's the baby boomer corporate slavery era. It is dead. And this is now the data era. The AI revolution it's begun. And becoming data driven has become pivotal for any business to succeed, because the intelligence, what makes the most powerful government, for example? The intelligence. That's what makes the most powerful government. It's about what data you have, and it's about what you know, and it's about what you can propose with what you know and take action on it. If you have no intelligence, how the hell are you? You're pretty much blindfolded, spinning in a circle, trying to throw a dart at a dartboard that's like 2 inches in diameter, and hoping that you hit that shit. And you have unlimited darts, and you're just going to keep going and going and going and going and going and going. But my business partner likes to say, "Well, would you rather just lift up every single rock on a beach because you know that something will be alive underneath one of them, maybe." And then you keep lifting rocks all day until you lift one up and you go, "Oh, look, a crab." Versus, okay, I could see all of the rocks on this beach. This one has a couple barnacles on it, and it has algae growing on the left side, and it's not dry enough where it continues to be wet even though it's low tide. So that means that there has to be a crab underneath, and you've got a 48% chance that there's a crab underneath because they need to be wet to live. So
I love
which one would you rather go with? Would you rather go with knowing which rocks the crab's going to be under, or just flip them all and fuck it till you get there?
Well, I'm with you. And this whole issue of, it's not just being unconventional, but doing what works. Take a look at a company like Costco. You ever shopped at a Costco?
Oh, yeah. No, it's a wonderful thing.
So they're twice as big as Sam's Club. 80 billion versus 40 billion. Look, Sam's Club is Walmart. Costco's built a better wholesale club model. Let me throw out one thing because I want your reaction to this. Why do you think Costco pays their employees 30% above industry average? Because most CEOs and others would say that that's just insanity. Why in the world would you pay somebody 30% more than industry average? So why do you think they do it?
Customer fucking service.
There's a big one. Why else do you think they do it?
Because they'll have a lower attrition rate and spend less money on training people.
So the attrition rate, if you knew what the attrition rate was at Sam's Club, I don't want to throw it out, high double digits. You look at what it is at Costco, it's not even double digits. So the tens of millions they save every year, it's just thinking about it the other way. Of course we would pay them more because we keep them. We don't have to train them every 2 weeks. There's no onboarding. There's no looking for new people, right? It's little tiny things like that that you say, this can be done, as you said, differently, but better. So there's a million examples that we use to try to get companies.
If you take care of employees, they will take care of you. Yes. Any business owner out there, I don't care what the size of your company is, if you fuck over the people that work for you, they're going to fuck you over too, or they're not going to care about what you ask them to do, or they're not going to be willing to change, or they're not going to be willing to work harder to move up.
Right. So when I ask these CEOs, when I meet them, I do keynotes, I present, certainly not during the pandemic, we're doing it this way. But when I'm up in front of a crowd and they're hearing me talk about purpose and the reason why the organization exists, I know you know the answer to this, but if you don't get it, don't worry. I'm not going to poke fun at you. If I ask the average CEO, pick a number, it's a $40 million company, and I say, why are you guys in business? What's the answer? They almost all say the same thing.
What, to make money?
Yes. It's ridiculous. It's like, really? That's it? And that's how they end up fucking over people, because everything is built around making a buck.
Making money's great, but that's the result. That's the result of any innovation. It's the result of a vision. And as you said, it's the result that everybody has the goal, the mission, and the vision in line. If you get really damn good at doing something, my parents taught me this since I was a child. If you're really damn good at something, you will find a way to get paid and get paid well while doing it. You just need to be able to take action and get results, then maintain those results and continue to move forward and further. As soon as you stop moving, it's either you're growing or you're dying. I say this all the time, but that's the thing. If you're really damn good at it, that's why niche is so important. Find your niche. Yes. And then spread out from there after you've dominated that, and then continue moving forward. But don't go don't veer off too far to the right or the left or wherever, because you're moving away from that vision. You're just doing something else because you thought it might make you money. As soon as it starts becoming about the money, you're going to find that you're bringing in more and more and more and more revenue when you're going into those different directions, except your profitability is pretty much stagnant.
So you've fallen right into my trap. Thank you. I appreciate it. You can play my straight man any day. I'm just kidding. So I said there were 3 legs to this stool that I've learned on this demand creation side. We've talked a bit about how we design unprecedented value, seeing what others miss, minimum viable audience, like you just said. And we talked a little bit about what I would call organizational health, and that is purpose, and then mission, vision. We didn't talk about core behaviors. A lot of companies talk about values. I don't believe in it. I believe in core behaviors, but we'll come back to that. But that third leg is what you just said when you said, as they chase money and everything starts to go this way. Dr. W. Edwards Deming, this is where I learned so much of this from. Deming is the guy who taught the Japanese everything they know. So if you go back to 1945, World War II, the bombs are dropped, the war ends, la, la, la. Deming is brought into Japan to not only help with the census, he was a statistician by trade, Rob. He was also a guy who was helping their manufacturers get back on their feet. And what he learned was appalling to him, what they didn't know. And so I'll keep this short. I learned a lot about Deming. But by 1973, when the oil embargo hit, and suddenly Honda and Toyota and then Datsun, which became Nissan, they all got a toehold in the US. And by 1980, it was the first auto bailout. GM and Chrysler couldn't make payroll because those 3 foreign automakers were eating their lunch. By the way, the one I didn't mention of the big 3 in Detroit was Ford. Ford didn't need any money because Ford was Deming's first client. Pretty interesting. Same damn thing happened in 2008. GM and Chrysler needed money from Obama's White House, right? Ford didn't need a damn thing because they had become a Deming disciple. I'll end it with this, and then I want obviously your opinions.
Oh, for sure.
If you look at Deming, who's the total quality management guru, it all got bastardized into lean manufacturing, 5S, all these kinds of things. If anybody who's listening to this pulls up on the web, Deming's 14 points for management. Point number 1 is constancy of purpose. Even back in the 40s and 50s, Deming was preaching purpose, but nobody heard him. All they heard was, let's reduce process variation, which is key, don't get me wrong. But think about it. Everything you and I have talked about now on this podcast is, how do we reduce variation? How do we get our niche? How do we see what others miss? How do we go after one core audience so that we don't go like this and chase the money? Deming was a variation guy, and that's where sometimes I lose people. It's like, look, everything we're talking about is built around reducing systemic variation. Look at all the intel that you guys provide. Tell me that doesn't help reduce waste, rework, and variation in a client's process.
Yeah. I mean, we've had results where their sales process effectiveness and efficiency has increased by 28% in just 1 month. And we've doubled people's revenue in about 4.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. It's because it's oneness. It's using the same thing for the same process. And it's also you doing it more effectively. Well, it's also leaving number crunching to the computers because humans weren't built to do that. We were built to be intuitive, inventive, creative, conversational, emotionally intelligent. We have emotions. My God, we have emotions. That is a huge difference. Machines are built off of logic. They work with logic. Emotions are the opposite of logic, in case people didn't know that. It's comparing like a banana to a rock. You can eat a banana. It's also a fruit. And then a rock is just a lump of molecules that will shatter your teeth and is something that you would create like a building or cement with, or kill someone with it. You can't kill someone with a banana. I mean, it's those two things together. But with what you were saying about Deming and the auto manufacturing, I thought that was very interesting because, yes, he's right. And there's a reason why Ford was so successful. It is that same reason. But the thing is, when you are whittling down to a niche, you need to make sure that your product still does stay relevant. So you're making variations of that niche and following what the market's demands are as they're using or consuming something like that, because if
Right.
you're not meeting the demands and you're just making it the same way that you've always made it, I mean, come on, who's going to buy the same blender that they sold when they invented the blender in the 1960s?
Right.
That thing's a freaking death trap. You know, I would never buy that. Or like a microwave or a TV. What if TVs were still black and white, were made out of solid wood, weighed 3,000 pounds, and had a 12-inch screen? No.
Did you know we haven't made a TV in this country since 1974 when the last Zenith rolled off the?
Zenith was probably the last one. But yeah, no. But that's the whole point, though, with what you were saying with Deming. And fun fact, when he was out in Japan, my grandfather actually knew Deming, which is pretty exciting because my grandfather helped establish the Japanese banking system, the national banking system.
Cool.
He was the attorney that was sent out there by the U.S. Pentagon. So it was pretty awesome. So he knew him and worked with him, which I didn't know until a previous conversation with you. I actually looked into it.
That is pretty awesome. Yeah, there was something I was going to say about Deming. You know, I've heard him speak many times. I did get to meet him twice, but his answer to almost any question he was asked before he passed away at the age of 93, he worked right up until he died. His answer was leadership. So if you asked him, how do we improve margins? How do we sell more stuff? How do we reduce waste and rework? How do we improve process? He'd lean into the microphone, Rob, and he'd say, leadership.
Leadership. It's all from the top down. That's the thing. If you have a poisonous culture in your company, one, it could be from bad hiring, but then again, your hiring processes aren't great, and that was your leadership's fault. Yeah. So everything does lead up to the head of the snake.
You know, for what it's worth, just again, I'll throw out a little thing here. People can Google Steve Jobs and Deming, and you can see Steve Jobs talking about what he learned from Deming, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I need to read up more on Deming. That's a new discovery to me. I mean, Six Sigma I am familiar with and all that stuff, but reading about what he's done in his life and what he said directly, I feel like would be more valuable than that, because Six Sigma is great, but it's kind of dry and crusty, and it's an interpretation of what Deming's ideas were. It wasn't.
It's a great point. And that, you know, is the full circle, I guess, of how I developed the third door, because I came up through operations in business, but then I got thrown over on the sales side, and I spent, 2.5 decades over there. But I applied process-oriented thinking to all of it. And I just thought, what in the world are we doing over here? This is just insane. In fact, I wish we'd had companies like yours back then to work with. My point is, Deming, again, I'm talking with my hands, Six Sigma, right? So there's all these points bopping around in a graph, and there are 3 standard deviations on either side of the mean, and there's your Six Sigma, right? That's what everybody knows, and it's dry, like you said. But if we look at that in terms of an organization, and if an organization is behaving with all this wide variation, that's not good. So organizational health, purpose, mission, vision, making sure we design unprecedented value. We're going to have higher margins. We attract the marketplace versus spending all this time on trying to sell. I took what Deming was trying to say and said, okay, that whole thing is a process. I'm not measuring productivity or revenue or profit or how many errors there are in a widget. I'm literally measuring the optimization of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's all quite lit. You could pretty much just break everything down in this entire universe, whether it's the stock market, whether it's a company or whatever. It's really just a couple of differential equations, a couple of regression models, matrices, and pretty much everything follows Lagrangian mechanics, which is it's a way to use quantum physics in actual real world mechanics under like our laws of physics and everything. You just replace the imaginary numbers with time. But I'm not going to get into that. It's really just way too far down the rabbit hole. But that's the thing, is that with that Six Sigma thing, like you're saying, with all those points that don't line up, there's a lot of frequency issues. Is that frequency needs to align, and it's really just an oscillation equation. That's all it is. When you add the chaos, or if it's the lack thereof, the mission, the vision, and
purpose,
rest, right? That is something that is causing chaos, right? So it's going to oscillate further and further and further, and it's becoming more powerful because the pressure is increasing. So the oscillation will get stronger and stronger, and it's adding power to it. But as soon as you align that stuff, that's when it starts to settle. It's no longer putting the pressure on it, and then you'll see a nice until it settles down. But then there's always other factors that are starting to try to make the shock system bounce again.
Yeah, and I'm a movie guy. Do you like movies?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so I'm a horror movie guy. Did you ever see the movie Split?
Oh my God, yes, incredible.
So James McAvoy, right? He's got all these split personalities.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into most organizations, they're split. They all have these crazy, back in the day, if we have an older generation on here, they're going to go back to Jekyll and Hyde. But for the newer generation, it is split. I think that guy had like 8 or 9 different personalities in that movie. It's an M. Night Shyamalan film.
Mm-hmm.
And organizations are that way. So go back to your oscillation, having all of this variability in the process. It's similar to having James McAvoy as your CEO. Who's going to show up today? And what's our flavor of the month strategy, right?
Yeah, it's true. Or there's a complete disconnect between two divisions, or I mean, not even two divisions, like most of them. The front of the house and the back of the house. Why is there a front and the back of the house?
Great point.
There are people who are working on the stuff in the background. Then there are people who are working on stuff in the foreground, and then people working on stuff in the middle ground. And that should all be connected, and they should see how they connect to each other.
Sure.
The sales team needs to actually have a conversation with the engineering team. The engineering team really needs to have a conversation with the marketing team. The marketing team should be conversing with the CS team.
I swear to you, this is a true story, and I won't go into a deep dive on it, but I was asked to go to Atlanta last year, and it was the first time I'd heard about the front of the house and the back of the house. So I called a meeting with the CEO's blessing. We got them all in a room. They'd been in business 3 years. They'd never met each other.
What?
They didn't know each other.
Not even over video or...
No, they were in a building where they were on two sides of the walkway, and they just kept apart. So when I brought them together, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a lot of fun, right? Because they all know each other. They'd never met.
See, that's a problem too with company culture right there. There's no employee outings. There's no cross division anything at that point. That's crazy to me. That is actually mind blowing. How are they around for 3 years like that?
Makes you wonder. Well, they were on their 4th chief marketing officer. I think every salesperson. They had churn like you can't believe.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know anybody. I mean, how does anybody feel like there's a process? And people can even suspect or even feel the disconnect where they feel like it's such a volatile state or so fragile that they don't want to be a part of it because they're afraid of their job security.
Yeah. So
that's when people start pointing fingers too. The sales team blames the engineering team for a faulty product when they're actually selling to the wrong people in the first place.
It's so true. Can I throw out a question for not only both of us, but for our audience? Not really a question, but it's a little process that has to do with some questions, but I think you'll find it intriguing. Do you mind if I throw them out?
Oh, please do.
So, you strike me as a very innovative guy, obviously. And not that most people, when they listen to a podcast, not that they thoroughly understand purpose, not that they thoroughly understand now Deming and variation, but they really want to latch onto this piece of how do I design unprecedented value? There's a guy at MIT that I got to know on LinkedIn. Dude is brilliant. Here's what he said. He goes, Sean, there's 2 questions that any organization needs to answer to go forward. This is kind of like your line extension piece earlier where you were talking about, within your niche, find other things that are relevant. The first question he said was, the organization needs to spend some time thinking about who you need your customers to become. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. Who do we need? And I did that within the third door within my company. We had a discussion. Who do we need our customers to become? That'll mess with your head. You got to really think about it and come to an agreement. Once you have that answer, he said, then you have to ask yourselves, what are we doing today to invest in them to ensure that outcome?
Yeah, it's listening to your market, not only listening to your market, but listening to your customers, to your clients, to your partners. If you're not listening to them, you're the one who's giving them that solution. Something bigger, better, and badder is going to come along and take them from you. And again, this ties back to the intelligence thing. If you're not learning from your market, that's a serious problem, because if you're not listening to their needs and you say, oh, no, we're the biggest, baddest out there, guess what? There's always something better or better than you. Always. There's
It's
no
so
such
true.
thing as a definite anything. There's no most, there's no least, there's no best, there's no worst. Because
Right.
there's always going to be something else. But that is full circle to getting insight on your customers. So insight on your prospects, that's great and it's helpful in little digestible pieces. I mean, I build artificial intelligence that actually solves that, where the salesperson doesn't actually need to know anything about them. They need to be able to resonate, and the work's already been done on the back end. Yes, they qualify for the product. Yes, their company's a good fit. Yes, this is a good fit for the salesperson to talk to. So all it needs to be had is a conversation with a good relationship, and then people are suckers for that. But on your customers, if you're not logging every piece of data while you're working with them, actually listening to them, conducting surveys, doing quarterly reviews to see how you can serve them better, your competitor is out there innovating.
Right.
And they are constantly trying to steal your clients. If you think that's not true, you are an incredibly naive person and you need to wake up, because they absolutely are.
I agree with you. And, the salesperson, as we know, is the one who usually is the direct conduit directly to the customer. I wish I could get more of them to ask this question, because in my years in sales and elsewhere, this is the question. So you're sitting with a top customer, right? And you do have that ability face to face, let's say, to do an in-person survey. Here's the question. Tell me what your leadership, your top management, what are those 5 or 6 KPIs that they're looking at every Monday morning on their dashboard, that Monday morning dashboard? What are the 5 or 6 things that they're looking at that's keeping their company afloat and going where they want to? Because if you know what those 5 things are, and whatever you're providing to that company, as long as you can align with that and help impact or influence one of those KPIs, you're golden. But there's not a salesperson I've met yet that thinks that way.
I can probably predict the top 3 answers when you ask that question to a salesperson.
Shoot.
Number 1, where's the dashboard?
Good point.
Number 2, could you repeat the question? And then number 3, which I think would be pretty funny, is what should I be looking at?
Right.
Number 4, maybe I'll go to 5. Number 4, what's a KPI?
Yeah.
And then number 5 is why.
Yeah. That's great. I like your.
How right was I though? Like, was it pretty good?
No, that was pretty good. It is a deer in the headlights type reaction. There's a book out there written by Ram Charan called What the CEO Wants You to Know. I hand it out to every salesperson I know. I'm like, this is what the CEO wants you to know. Learn a little about business and you'll be able to ask better questions.
Oh my God. Oh my God. How many times salespeople out there, for the love of God, learn something about the technology or the service that you sell that is deeper than just trying to sell it. If you understand how it works fundamentally, or you understand things about the market that you're selling to, the more you can relate to someone's business, the better you could sell. The more you know about your own product, the better you could sell. And for all those sons of bitches out there that are the innovation team or the engineer or whoever, you saying, oh, they don't need to know anything because they're just salespeople, you are dead wrong and you are fucking your own company over, and stop that immediately. Salespeople are inherently less intelligent, and this is quite literally based off of study, than most other people in the company. And that a lot of people just quote unquote fell into sales, or, I couldn't do anything else, or they get shoved over to sales or something like that if they're not happy with them, and they're going to get a lawsuit if they fire them. That happens often, and as terrible as that is, it's true. But as much as I don't want to think that it's true, but that's the thing, they need to know. And it's not about how smart they are. It's not about how much they know. It's not about if it's relevant to them. It's relevant to everything that they're doing, and it gives them that purpose.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of that is leadership's fault, because they are tasking them primarily with quota attainment and revenue growth. But let me throw something out. Back about 15, 20 years ago, we all know UPS. They deliver small packages, UPS. Teamsters went on strike. All the salespeople, many of them, thousands of them for UPS, had to come off the street, and they had to move freight. So they were working on docks. They were working weekends, nights. They had to drive the trucks. They had to deliver freight. Rob, do you want to know who stayed in touch with the customers Couldn't have been salespeople because they're out doing the work because the Teamsters are on strike. It was their 2,000 industrial engineers that went and called on customers. I have a question for you. Do you think the industrial engineers asked UPS's customer base the same questions that the salespeople were asking?
Absolutely not. They probably asked some questions about logistics, about packing, about materials, and about structural integrity.
And guess what happened? They brought all that back. They started to improve their service. So what you said is spot on.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I would rather speak to an industrial engineer about my shipping needs if I was in distribution than a salesperson, because what the hell is a salesperson going to know about logistics and structural integrity and materials? What are they going to know about that? Absolutely nothing, and they should know about it if they're in the business.
So, I don't know if we're at the point, but I'd like to try to summarize a little of this and again, get your take on it. We've talked about a lot of stuff. I built this whole thing around in B2B, how do we attract, like B2C does, how do we attract with minimal or at least greatly reduced sales and marketing effort? How do we attract? We've talked about you have to solve the identity crisis, right? You can't be James McAvoy in Split. You can't be Jekyll and Hyde. You've got to solve the identity crisis because once we know who we are, and we're purpose driven. We know why the organization exists and the difference we're trying to make in people's lives. And as a leadership team, we now hire that way. We now talk to our people about this every day. It greatly reduces variation. Would you agree?
I would agree. So knowing who the company is part of, I think first the employees need to know who they are. That's important. Sure. If you're saying, I disagree with that slightly, is that the company can know who they are and all that's great, but a lot of enterprises, they know exactly who they are, yet they're still losing customers left and right. To greatly reduce marketing and sales costs would be for marketing and salespeople in the company, if not everybody in the company, has a personal brand. You need to be a person, be a real human being, have a digital presence, and be a person. Don't advertise your company. You're being that annoying boyfriend or girlfriend where all you're doing is talking about yourself, and that's what companies do. Oh, if I were to go, white rabbit this, white rabbit that, white rabbit, white rabbit, white rabbit. You're just talking about yourself. You're annoying. Nobody likes your shit. And right. Honestly, it's pretentious. It's just like dating. You need to be yourself. You need to be helpful. You need to drive value. So it's not about selling the product. It's about giving value to people, and it's about staying on track with your vision, mission, and so on. So we need people to have their personal brand, be a human being. The enterprise companies who won't let their employees actually be themselves and advertise themselves, they're going to die, which is great because nobody wants that. Nobody wants it in the first place. B2B has been given this stamp of you need to be dry. You need to be extremely consistent with all of your employees as if they're all the same people. No, people are interested in people. And if the people in your company are interesting, they think your business is interesting. This is how, my company, you know what our digital marketing budget is?
I don't.
$0.
There you go.
Because Facebook, Instagram, or social media advertising is a waste of fucking money. The conversion rate is 1% for engagement with a $20 million budget. You're literally lighting money on fire and going, woo, that's what you're doing. And the people are targeting the wrong people in the first place. Marketing people have the wrong idea of, okay, this had the most impressions. This had the most clicks. This had the most engagements. No, you're going after the wrong target to begin with. You should be targeting the people that your salespeople have the ability to sell to, not the people who are interested.
So pause right there. Let's go back to your friend, Elon Musk. Think of everything you just said. When's the last time you saw a Tesla ad?
Literally never.
When's the last time you saw, because I don't know if you have them in North Carolina, but I keep going back to Five Guys Burgers and Fries. When's the last time you saw an ad? No radio, no TV, no billboards, no nothing. It can be done. You just have to build something that people fall in love with, and that is the unspoken need. It's that which they usually can't articulate, and in the end, they go, oh my God, I got to have that.
And that is emotional resonance.
Right.
And that's built through the people. You have to think of the company as a person. If all of the people have an identity crisis, the company has an identity crisis. If all of the people know who they are and they can express themselves, then the company is built up of all the personalities and archetypes of all of the people who are in that company. And then if they're following the same mission, the vision, and everything, then that is all going to align and it's going to resonate at the same level because everybody's on the same page that they can do as they need to do and be themselves. And then it's about hiring correctly because they fit in with the culture and everything like that. Because, a bad fit for culture hire is usually the most catastrophic because no matter how talented they are, they can't work with the people around them.
Right.
So that's the thing, is that people need to understand who they are. They need to let their employees do as they do. As long as they're a good fit, you'll be able to find out. And it's about creating the brand about the individuals, which will attract the people because people follow people, not companies. I mean, how many businesses do you do business with? And you say, you wouldn't say, Microsoft has the best computers. You'll be like, no, you'd be like, Teddy. I get all my computers from Teddy because he's the best. He knows his hardware really well and they've got great prices and everything like that. What is Teddy? He's a representative for Microsoft.
Right.
You're not going to say you bought it from Microsoft, you bought it from Teddy.
Right.
You're not doing business with the business. From a numbers perspective, yes. But from a real humanistic perspective, you're not, and you never will be.
And so that brings up an interesting point, right? Because I'm going to push back just a little bit. We've got lots of companies out there where they have the Teddys. They have these great salespeople that have built these relationships. But when Teddy leaves Microsoft and goes somewhere else, often he takes the business with them. And that's a problem. That's a big problem, which is why I say you do need to build it around what the company stands for in the marketplace. Something that is emotional, that is high integrity, something like all these companies we've already talked about, what they've done, so that the reason why they buy from you is because the value that the product or service offers, not because of the salesperson. I'm telling you, I hate to say I'm anti-salesperson, but I've had 700 of them in my employ over my career. I would go to war with about 3 of them. So we want them to buy because of the value that's being given to them, not necessarily the person who's presenting that value to them. That's what I
That is correct. Until market becomes too washed up, or it becomes too what's the word I'm looking for? Commoditized. Right. Then it's about the numbers at that point, because there's a choice every direction that you look. That's the same, that's the same, that's the same, that's the same, virtually the same thing, and then it's beyond the point of innovation. But if you can innovate further, then boom, that's when you've created another unicorn. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there. And that is the most important thing. And I would say also, it is about the salesperson until we can perfect targeting. So as soon as B2B could target the right people and it's the right sales person for the right decision maker, exactly what I'm trying to solve, that's when that comes in line, is what is the value? What is the cost? How is this affecting my business? Right. People will go with the lesser product because they like the person they did business with more. But
bingo,
if the targeting was right, and it's always someone that you like doing business with, then it's no longer about the target anymore. Even if it's inbound, outbound, if it's the right person you talk to, you always get along with them, fantastic. The relationship becomes not about the business with the individual. If they were all like that, it becomes the relationship with the individual, and then the business is a separate relationship driven by value, product, and whatever else.
Yeah.
But we're years out to get there. But listen, this was great, but we are out of time now. So everybody in the audience, I hope you really enjoyed this. I thought it was absolutely just pivotal and spectacular to do this with you, Sean. You've got great methodologies, great theories, and great solutions that everybody can learn from here. And I can tell that you have a whole lifetime of experience, and you're very forward thinking and quite innovative, where a lot of people, after they, they get their director position, that all dies.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Work your way up the ladder, that's when it's dead. So I can very much appreciate that. So I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And everybody out there, we are done. But thank you so much for listening to Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. Again, my name is Rob Turley, co-founder, co-CEO at White Rabbit Intel. Again, this is Sean Storms. And thank you again for being here. Please follow us on hashtag DTRH podcast and hashtag follow the White Rabbit. Don't look that up on Instagram. You'll get banned. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Down the Rabbit Hole podcast for new episodes weekly on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, and YouTube. If you'd like to apply to be featured on the podcast or recommend a featured guest, please feel free to email us at theteam@whiterabbitintel.com.